Hello, you're listening to Wine Blast with me, Susie Barry, and my husband and fellow Master of Wine, Peter Richards. Welcome. Now, this episode is a biggie because it's all about Burgundy.
Yeah, it's Burgundy time, isn't it?
It is indeed.
And all that. Because, of course, Burgundy is every wine lover's dream subject, but equally, all is not entirely well in the world of Burgundy. This feels a bit like a tipping point for the region, so an opportune moment to dive into why this might be. Here's a view from the coalface that sums up the stark reality of the situation.
It is a roaring situation. It's difficult to fight against nature, and then that reinforces us to sell at higher price. If people want to continue to drink wines in Burgundy, so they have to be ready to pay more for that.
Strong words from Florent Rouve there. We'll be hearing more from Florent later in the programme, as well as from Burgundy experts David Roberts, MW of Goodhouse, and Jason Haynes of Flint Wines. Also, Caroline Drouin from Domaine Drouin-la-Rose.
Yeah, so the plan for this episode is to take a fresh look at Burgundy. It's possibly the most archetypal wine region on the planet, yet things are changing fast there, so it's never been more important to be up to date. We're going to use the 2021 vintage as a springboard to explore the topic, because that's the new vintage being released. It's an eye-opening one with lots of drama and intrigue, isn't there? There's stories of catastrophe and redemption. It's like a Hollywood blockbuster, but more importantly, it also touches on key themes within the bigger picture of Burgundy right now.
So let's get straight to it. The 2021 season in Burgundy was something of a nightmare, one of the hardest in the modern era. Unusually warm late winter weather was followed by a vicious April frost, and the stressed vines, first of all, shut down and then frequently succumbed to mildew and oidium in what was a lacklustre summer. There was rain and hail, but then a milder autumn finally dragged the vineyards and their tiny crop over the finishing line. Chardonnay yields were down by up to 85% in some of the grandest vineyards in Burgundy. Pinot growers lost up to 50% of their crop. By the end, growers were exhausted and, frankly, rather traumatised.
Yeah, so much for the catastrophe. The redemption came in the form of the wines, which have turned out better than expected, in a kind of new wave, old school style, if that makes sense.
Just about. Just about.
It
will.
Old school with a K. It was a cooler year after the hot, 2018, 2019, 2020. So people are calling the wines classical, though, Burgundy guru Jasper Morris, MW, points out that the season itself was far from classical, so it's not the most precise term to use. Winemaking has been adapted to suit the vintage, often less extraction and oak, fewer whole bunches, sometimes a judicious touch of chaptalization to boost alcohol levels a bit. And there are some really delicious wines, both red and, if you can actually find them, whites too.
Yeah, there are some superb wines. It's a style I think we can safely say we like.
Yeah.
That said, quantities available are tiny, especially at the top end, because the frost hit the best sites hardest in 2021. Some growers didn't even supply tasting samples this year because there just wasn't enough to go round. And several merchants cancelled their Burgundy 2021 tastings for the same reason, which is highly unusual.
Yeah, it's a bit mad, isn't it?
And what this means, of course, is that prices, which were already high, have gone up again. Some have actually doubled in real terms, haven't they?
Yeah, and all of this is leaving ordinary Burgundy lovers like us, and most probably you, scratching our heads thinking, this is all a bit bonkers. Burgundy is now officially bonkers.
You heard it here first.
We can call it. So, we wanted to try to make some sense of this. And we went along to the Burgundy 21 tastings that did go ahead in London in early January 2023. Our aim was to talk to wise heads, like fellow Master of Wine and buying director for London Fine Wine Merchants Goodhouse, David Roberts. So I caught up with David in Goodhouse's London HQ, which is a busy office, and we were trying not to disturb people actually doing some work around us. So I asked him sotto voce to tell us about the 2021 vintage.
I think 2021 vintage in Burgundy is quite remarkable, really, because without a doubt it was the most stressful vintage I have come across for the growers, and what they have done and the work that they put in throughout the year. It's quite incredible to see the quality at the end of it. I think that after the devastation of the frost, which everybody's talked about at the beginning of April, I mean, the vines, first, they were just incredibly stressed. I mean, all the growers just talk about how, the vineyards were brown, across the board for about 3 or 4 weeks. The vines just sort of shut down. And growers had never seen this before, and they didn't know what to do. And then following that, the climatic conditions in the early summer, they were challenging. Growers knew that they had very, very little crop. It was going to be an incredibly small harvest, but they had to work rigorously and probably harder than they've ever done before to protect their vines, one from the stresses from the frost, but also the difficult humid conditions during particularly June and July. But I think, that was very demoralizing for the growers. But in the end, it's come through, and it's an absolute credit to the growers what they've done. I've loved tasting the red wines. I think that it's sort of reminiscent for me of my early days in the wine trade, going back to the 90s, where we've got wines which have got lovely elegance, lovely refinement, a beautiful purity of fruit, particularly for the reds. They have a terroir authenticity and low alcohols. Many of the wines I've tasted are between 12.5% and 13%. I really can't think of a wine that I've tasted over 13.5%. So that's just been an absolute joy. And the other thing I think that is the quality of the tannins. Sometimes you think that a cooler, later ripening vintage, the tannins can be a little bit tight and a little bit linear and firm. These actually are just beautiful tannins. I think that, some of the hotter vintages we've had recently, you've had grittier, granular tannins. These are just so perfectly in balance. I like the acidity level. I think they're fresh. So they're not powerhouse wines, but I think it's wrong to say this is a vintage, an early drinking vintage. Yes, there's an approachability to them, but actually, it's like everything. If the wine's balanced when it's young, it's going to be balanced when it's old. These will keep, and I think they'll show stunning aged Pinot characteristics. They really will do. So that I like. The white wines are very different in style to 2020. They're fresh. They're vibrant. There is next to no white wine at all. Many of our growers are talking about 85, 90% down. Jean-Philippe Fichet talked about one of his cuvées in Meursault, which he would normally produce 35 casks, and he's made 4 casks this year. So that just puts it into perspective. I think that in general, there's, nice balance, nice reflection in general for the appellation. They don't necessarily have the density of a great vintage, but it's a very nice vintage. I think the vineyards that were really impacted by the frost, possibly the yields are so small that, it's inevitable that some of that terroir authenticity has been lost because they're so intense. But I just think that it's so exciting considering everything that they were faced with, that they've produced wines that have surprised the growers and they've surprised us, and it's just so lovely to have them to taste.
You talk about short supplies. Talk to me about pricing this year. What's happened on that front?
I think pricing, it is domain by domain. It really is. And even within domains, it's vineyard by vineyard. So you could have a prestige vineyard. And particularly, I think that the problem is that if you're in the red wine producing areas, that your Grand Cru vineyards were impacted more by the frost than the vines on the plains, and that's inevitable because the reason why they are Grand Cru or they're a top Premier Cru is that historically in previous centuries they were warmer locations. They ripened in these traditionally cooler years, so you got better quality fruit. Sadly, in 2021, it was the warmer locations where the budding started earlier, and they were the ones that were impacted by the frost. So, you will see that for Grand Crus, there is so little. Market demand is where it is. Negociant prices, what they were prepared to pay, domains for Grand Cru were at the highest they've ever been. Land values are extraordinarily high. So, at that level, we are seeing significant price increases. But there are others where they're sort of being more sensible. Some growers are saying that they have put their prices up this year, but they'll maintain them next year. But there are price increases across the board. And, when, you look at the volumes that we're getting, I mean, I was prepared to see allocations down, but I've been aghast to see how little wine there really is, and so we have to accept it. And, demand for Great Burgundy has never been higher. It is a worry. I mean, we can't hide that fact, that, Great Burgundy is a real luxury now. And, as a wine lover, there is a worry because how do the next generation or the people who just want to drink nice Burgundy, it's tough. But we're trying to find quality white and reds from these areas that, the Côte Chalonnaise or northern southern Côte d'Or and up in the Oak Cote, where there is value, so that still true Burgundy lovers can buy wine and affordable wine.
And you talk about moving into more, say, satellite areas, but maybe Haute Côte, which weren't considered in the past to be great quality. Do you think with climate change and things warming up, these areas which were maybe a bit cool before are starting to become better and better quality as well as offering affordability?
Yeah, without a doubt. And you see that in terms of certain growers, such as Sylvain Catillard, who's made a huge investment. He's doubled the size of his estate because he's bought significant land up in the Oak Cote where he sees the future. That doesn't mean that the classic areas are going to sort of suffer, because I think that the vine is an extraordinary thing. It mutates and it adjusts. But I do think that areas like the Oak Cote, it's just so exciting, and climate change has benefited in the same way that you see it areas such as Auxey-Duresse or Monteley, or going down to Marange, even the reds in Chassagne are suddenly coming back into vogue. So and Santenay as well. So yeah, it's there are we worry about climate change, but there are some exciting opportunities as well.
I mean, would we see other varieties being used beyond Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, or is that a step too far?
I'm sure people are going to experiment. They have to. I mean, I think that the great thing is that wine growers, winemakers love experimenting. They're passionate about it, so they will try. But I really do think that both the Pinot and the Chardonnay, they will adjust, they'll mutate, and inevitably people will try different varieties at the moment, but I suspect that the real impact might sadly be after my career's over. It'll be for the next generation who will see the joys of other varieties.
And if we do see those, which ones would you think? Which ones would you go for?
I don't know. I think that it is interesting to see. I think that it's very interesting to see what a lot of the Côte d'Or producers in the Côte Nuit, they're all investing in Beaujolais at the moment. They clearly see, Gamay, and they're trying to adjust the winemaking process for Gamay, so making Gamay in the same way that they vinify Pinot Noir. So I think that, if that's successful, they're inevitably going to say, well, look, maybe we should try that, and logically, I think that you could see some of the sort of the Rhone Valley varieties sort of moving northwards. Whether I'm not sure whether many Burgundians are ready to experiment with Italian varieties, but who knows? I mean, Nebbiolo, it could be interesting. Who knows? I mean, we'll see. Yeah.
Burgundian Nebbiolo, there's a thought. So finally, David, could you sum up the 2021 wines, both white and red, in just a couple of words each?
I think reds, purity, elegance, and terroir expression. I think for the whites, bright, vivacious, and dynamic.
David, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, all right, pleasure. Thank you.
Burgundian Nebbiolo, or Côte d'Or Gamay or Syrah. Now, That's an intriguing concept.
Yeah. People have mentioned Syrah before, haven't they, as a potential import into the Côte d'Or. I know there's been some trials going on. I've not heard of Nebbiolo.
Well,
being mooted.
Sort of makes sense,
But
it
does
it's
make
often
you think. It
like
makes you
likened to
think.
Pinot, isn't it? Yeah,
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. But just to step back for a moment, what we're talking about here is climate change and the future of Burgundy in general. Warmer winters mean that spring frosts are increasingly an issue for Chardonnay, which naturally buds early. Chardonnay, though, is synonymous with Great White Burgundy. But how long can you keep fighting against what seems to be the new normal? It's such a regular occurrence now. Crops taking a big hit from frost. At some point, surely you have to think things need to change.
Yeah.
Maybe the variety.
Yeah.
Especially if, as Burgundians have long said, it's not about Chardonnay, it's about the terroir.
Yeah, and Chardonnay's the vehicle for the terroir, so you could have other vehicles.
You
Yeah,
could.
it's interesting, isn't it?
You could.
Mini
Morris
we
Minor.
did also put this question to growers, which we'll come on to in a bit with some intriguing answers. Meantime, I did just want to pick up on what David said about Great Burgundy is a real luxury now, with the emphasis on luxury. And he also said something along the lines of, we just have to accept it.
I can understand the logic, but I really
stand on that one?
struggle to accept it on an emotional level. I want to be able to drink nice Burgundy, not maybe the top stuff, but nice Burgundy. And I don't just want to gaze at it longingly from afar.
You want to try the top stuff.
Well, I don't mind trying
We
this.
all do.
I'm very happy to.
We all do. And it's just, it pains me too. It pains every lover of good wine and good Burgundy. But, maybe this is the tipping point, when top Burgundy really does enter the realms of, frankly, unaffordable luxury. And that's very, I use that term in a loaded way, luxury goods, So, these very issues of climate change, of pricing, changing grape varieties were topics I addressed with grower Florent Rouve, who not only makes wine in the Mâconnais, but also in Jura in eastern France. So he has a unique perspective, I think. I chatted to him at Charles Taylor's Burgundy tasting in London in January, while Europe was experiencing a winter heatwave. It was pretty noisy, apologies for that. But I started by asking him how much of his crop he'd lost because of the frosts in 2021.
About 2/3 of the harvest. Yeah. So the problem was that we had a quite warm winter, and then the buds start to develop quite early in the year. Then, so when frost arrived in April, which is quite common, so buds were well developed then, and then so that is why we suffer quite a lot of damages because of the frost then. So we lost about 2/3 of the harvest then. But my fear was to with so low quantity of bunches to ripe. If we had a warm summer than in 20, for example, my fear was to obtain very high grapes with very high concentration and with very low acidity then. So, and then finally to obtain a vintage both rare and not so balanced then. But thanks to nature is not so bad sometimes, and then summer and spring were quite rainy and cold, and so finally, even if despite of the low harvest, so we had very well balanced juices then. So with acidity, crispy, refreshing Chardonnay. Once again, what we want to show in Burgundy normally.
So a sort of classical, fresh, crisp, refreshing sort of style. So you're happy with how the wines turned out in the end?
Oh yes, definitely, yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, for some people, for new consumers of wine, so it's a little disappointed because compared with 20, for example, the structure is much more austere. But for me, it's a classical vintage, and then it is what it is why Burgundy has such a fame worldwide, because of this style of wine. So we used to do. Yeah. So that is why I'm quite happy finally. Yeah.
So what are the big issues in Burgundy right now? What's everyone talking about?
The frost again, because
so would that tie into sort of climate change more generally?
Yes. Yeah, in general, yeah. Well, yeah, it is a quite worrying situation. Because today I don't know what is the temperature today, but it is quite warm there for being in January then. So and the buds start to get random now. So and then we are afraid to be in the same situation that in 21 then. So we are trying to think about what to do then to produce wine despite of this frost then. So maybe we have to change the way to prune the vines. Maybe we have to change the way to work the soils, and then for example, trying to plow less and then to keep more grass. And then, so there are plenty of things that we can think about, but it's difficult to fight against nature, as you imagine. And so my idea is that, we'll continue to lose grapes, and then we have to keep in mind that the average harvest in Burgundy will be in the future more around, I don't know, maybe 25 to 30 liters per hectare than 50. I mean, what we used to do until now. And then that will force us to sell at higher price, even higher price. But that's it. And then it is the situation. I mean, and then if people want to continue to drink wines in Burgundy, so they have to be ready to pay more for that, because nature will be less generous the year coming. So, yeah, that's it.
But you're interesting because you make wines in Jura as well.
Yeah.
Now, Chardonnay is difficult in Burgundy because it buds early and these spring frosts keep coming with global warming. Could there be a situation where, you change the grape variety for a less early budding variety?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to tell you that before, because as you can imagine, Chardonnay is so representative of what is Burgundy. So could you imagine tomorrow Burgundy made with Sauvignon Blanc or with Marsanne?
Maybe not, but maybe with some Jura varieties, which isn't so far away. Could that be feasible?
Yeah, actually, some people try to plant Savagnin in Burgundy now. Yeah,
people are planting it.
Yes, yeah. Because why not? I mean, of course, we have to be open-minded to face this situation, of course. But it's difficult to imagine Burgundy without Chardonnay. And I think that first, before imagining planting new varieties, so I think that we have work to do with Chardonnay first. And then if there's no choice, so we had to change then the grape, of course. But finger crossing that this global warming will be stabilized a little bit this year, and then we'll be able to continue to produce Chardonnay. And as I told you, we have to make our calculation, and then to think with average harvest, and then not a normal harvest. Let me explain. For example, 22 we had a good harvest, good crop. But I will surely not reduce my prices despite of the quantity available, because I hope I will be wrong. But considering the winter we have, I'm afraid that in this vintage we had frost again. Then, so, and then that is why I told you that we have to think about average of vintage of yields, and not normal yields that will be due each year. Then, so
Florent, thank you very much indeed.
Well, thanks to you, and then I hope that you will understand my English, because it's quite poor.
So there's another one to throw into the potential Burgundy mix, Savagnin.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I really like that idea.
It's absolutely one of my favourite white grape varieties.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it in Burgundy. Why not?
To see it in there.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you said in that sense.
But really, I think the key point Florent is making, they'll probably stick with Chardonnay and accept that some years they're going to take a hit on production quantity because of climate change and frosts. So as a result, their commercial approach will be to keep prices high to offset those losses.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's what he's saying, isn't it?
Pretty much the long and short of it, isn't it? It's the blunt truth. And thank you to him for being
not
honest.
good for
He's
us.
based in the Macronais. Remember, this is not some of the grandest
sites.
It's not
the Côte d'Or, is
it? And you can understand the policy from the grower's perspective, can't you? You know, I suppose it's just sad. You know, this is the world we live in now, the world of climate change, you know, and of sky-high prices for some wines, particularly those in classic regions, which then become only available to the seriously wealthy.
Yeah, yeah. And quite a few merchants we spoke to this year said they were, and I quote, amazed that people were accepting these seemingly annual price rises, didn't they? And even they were questioning how long this could just keep going. Jasper Morris said, "This is a problem. Can't see how this vintage can justify." And what he meant was the steepest the price rises.
Yeah.
And he also said, Burgundy has to be really careful.
Do you know, I really agree here, because I suppose the point he's making is this is a sort of lighter style of vintage. Most people are saying it's not going to age, it's not a blockbuster. So to charge really high prices for a vintage,
sky-high prices,
not the most stellar.
Do you know, again though, Burgundy has a magical appeal, and people will want to keep on those allocation lists. So I think it just seems that maybe people are prepared to buy one or two or three bottles for the same price, excuse me, that they used to get 12 or 6 or 12.
It's almost a form of self-delusion, isn't it? I'm getting my Burgundy at the same price. You're getting one bottle where you've got 12. And the issue is scarcity, isn't it? And that's why Burgundy, you know, can do it. And that's, of course, increasingly fueled by climate change. So it's a vicious circle, isn't it? Anyway, you know, Burgundy's definitely making other classic regions look good value right now. And it's also spurring the quest to find good value Pinot and Chardonnay alternatives, isn't it? But we're going to come on to that, aren't we?
Yeah, we will.
Meantime, by way of brief summary at this stage, the challenging 2021 vintage in Burgundy, which was frost hit, then cool, has made some lovely, fresh, lighter styles of red and classical whites, but they're in very short supply and they're pricey. Climate change means growing seasons will likely remain challenging and growers will keep prices high. Don't be surprised if other great varieties are trialled in Burgundy, but equally, don't be surprised if they just stick with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Yeah,
so following on from the varietal theme and also looking to the future, I spoke with Caroline Drouin, the 9th generation of the family estate Drouin-Larose in Gevry-Chambertin. I asked her, what are the big issues in Burgundy right now?
Each generation has a new challenge, and I am nearly 40. And so the issues for my generation, my colleague, is to continue what we did since a long time, since long generation, because we want to continue this really traditional job, and we want to continue to have vines and to have great wine because now Burgundy wine are really well known and very famous in all the world, and so we need to continue to have the perfect vine, to respect the nature, to do great Pinot Noir with the different problems of climate, problems of yield, and so we have to find a good balance between the quality and the respect of the nature, and also the big challenge is to transmit to our children, because why we get up each morning is because we want to continue and to give this passion and this job and our challenge to our children.
Do you ever see a change from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in Burgundy?
Yeah, of course. We each year we have more concentrate Pinot Noir, more elegant Chardonnay, due to, of course, the climate, but also due to the culture, because now we try to have the perfect balance between the grapes and the energy of the vine, because we can't have a lot of grapes in vine. We have to manage this, so we reduce a lot the yield due to because we want to have the best quality, the best concentration in the grapes. So now it's each record, if we haven't damaged with the climate, we have perfect regular grapes. It's look jewelry.
Just thinking about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, can you see a time when those grape varieties won't work anymore, that you, because of the climate and getting warmer, are you going to have to look at other varieties?
Yeah, of course. There are, as I said, we have interprofessionals who help us and who try to find new selection, perhaps, or new opportunity with other variety. But for the moment, I trust in Pinot Noir and in Chardonnay because the nature have the powerful to adapt and to continue to move with the different problems of climate and so when there are Pinot Noir everywhere in the world and sometimes in really hot region and they can produce really good Pinot Noir. Of course, the characteristics are a little different than our Pinot Noir actually at this time, but I imagine we can continue to have the same variety, and we will adapt this variety to the new challenge.
So when you talked about passing on your vines and your vineyards and your traditions to your children, what do you think the future holds for Burgundy?
I would like to have the answer. It's we don't know what will be the life of our children and what will be the Burgundy wine in the future. But I hope they will have the same quality of life than us. I expect for them to have the same customer, the same market, and the same product because we are really, really lucky with the Burgundy wine and all this, the staff and the market and the customers.
Caroline, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So they want Burgundy to remain top dog in the wine world, understandably, but I do sense concern for the future there too. She's talking about sticking with Pinot and Chardonnay and accepting reduced yields too, like Florent did. Yes, of course, Burgundy can make warmer climate style of Pinot Noir, but is that really Burgundy? And at what point will people simply stop buying because it's unaffordable and atypical?
Those are the big questions.
Yeah.
They are indeed.
Yeah.
But and actually another issue that people mentioned in Burgundy that I noticed right now, beyond the climate, is that a significant amount of vines are having to be replanted because they're dying.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's people think it's something to do with poor rootstock selection.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've
one merchant said it was as high as 20% of vines per year needing replanting, and no one really knows why. I mean, that's worrying, isn't it?
That's really...
I mean, it's intriguing, but it's definitely worrying, and it is certainly not going to help the scarcity and the rising price issues.
Yeah. I had heard about this, and, perhaps it's something we can look into
the mix.
In another episode,
yeah,
it's really concerning on top of everything else.
I know,
as you say. So
pile it on.
Moving on, piling on, and moving on. We've got one last interview, looking to the future with the softly spoken Jason Haynes of Flint Wines. I caught up with him at Flint's 2021 En Primeur tasting and asked him how sustainable Burgundy's price rises are, or is it just that Burgundy has a magic stardust that people simply have to have?
Well, I think there is a new generation of wine buyers who, in a way, have only never really known the prices of days gone by. So, they perhaps started buying 4 or 5 years ago, and this is what good Burgundy costs. And it's probably fair to say Burgundy has never been as good as it is now. Quality control is significantly higher. Viticulture is better. So I think there are strong reasons why prices are very different. I suppose what the best way to look at it is to say, well, wines haven't really gone up, it's just the cases have got smaller. So instead of getting 12 bottles, maybe now you only get 6 or perhaps only 3 for the same amount of money. But that we're talking about an improvement in quality, but what's key is you do see it filtering all the way down the hierarchy. So today, the quality of Bourgogne Blancs and lesser appellations is so much better than it really was. So you don't necessarily have to go all the way up to the really big names to get something of high standard. And actually, I'd be very happy drinking a Bourgogne Pinot Noir, for example, if it's made by Christophe Roumier. So there are...
A little insight into your Tuesday night drinking habits, Jason.
If only, but good winemakers, diligent winemakers, I think they care about their lesser wines as much as their grander wines, and then I think that if I was ever to give anyone a tip about what to buy, it would be buy lesser wines from better producers.
Climate change, it's on every. We're talking about it this vintage with the frosts. How do you see Burgundian producers responding to climate change?
Interestingly enough, obviously, when we talk about climate change, we're generally talking about the climate getting warmer, and yet we're talking about frosts. So obviously, to be specific about Burgundy, it's basically because of warmer winters means everything is more advanced. So frosts are not really happening any more severely or at different times of the year. It's just the vines are in a more dangerous or vulnerable position than they used to be back in the day. You can do slightly later pruning to offset against that. Long term, I'm not sure that's necessarily the right way to go. In terms of frost, prevention of frost, other than praying that you have a very, very cold December and January, I'm not sure there's much we can really do to prevent that. I hope that people don't get to a stage where they actually want to rip up Chardonnay and Pinot and start planting Syrah and Grenache in Burgundy. I think that would be a great shame. But there are, I guess, picking earlier will become the norm. I think the days of Burgundians being able to go on their August holidays is probably, for now anyway, a thing of the past. When they were harvesting in 21, back in around about mid to late September, I mean, that was the first time they'd done that for about 5 years, and that would have been the norm for decades, really. Interestingly, for a lot of winemakers this year, the younger ones, it would have been the first time they've encountered a cool vintage where they would had to have done things they haven't had to have done over the last 3 or 4 years. It was the first time in their winemaking career. So it was interesting tasting the 21s, and then you perhaps re-look at odd bottles of 20 or 19 in the cellar afterwards, and you suddenly think, my God, those feel rich. And at the time, they felt wonderful. But it was very refreshing to taste a vintage like 21 and actually remind oneself why one fell in love with Burgundy originally, I suppose.
And last question, you've built your business largely around specialising in Burgundy, not exclusively, you do other things too. How do you see the future for the region?
It still feels very positive. I mean, something we've always wanted to do is try and find the next genius, if you like, young genius. And you think, surely there can't be yet another one out there. But they do keep cropping up in, not quite like buses, but there is always someone who comes out of the woodwork who's doing something really exciting, has an ambition and a passion and a work ethic that is just really impressive and is reflected in their wines very, very quickly. So in that sense, I'm very positive that the new generation will just keep coming through and keep the energy within Burgundy. Burgundy seemed more open than it was in the past. I think people, if they were making good wine, it was a secret. I mustn't let anyone see what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. And there's much more communication now, much more sharing of ideas, and that can only be a positive thing.
Jason, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I suppose it's ironic that the quality of lesser Burgundy is better than ever because climate change means vineyards that were too cool are now able to ripen properly and make good wine. Yeah. But at the same time, climate change is making top Burgundy ever more expensive and, frankly, unaffordable.
Yeah, it's paradoxical, isn't it? It's not a straightforward picture. I mean, Jason's obviously positive about the future, and it's certainly not all doom and gloom, is it? There are some delicious Burgundies out there. There's loads of ambitious young talent. There's huge heritage there. It's amazing. But, you do worry, don't you? For example, Jason mentioned they're looking at selling village wines to restaurants sort of over the next year at around £50 a bottle, which means £200 probably on the restaurant list. That's for a young sort of lesser.
A village wine, not a Grand Cru, not a Premier Cru.
Sort of a Volney or a Beaune or a whatever.
200 quid a bottle.
And he did concede. He did concede that, and I'm quoting, feels like quite a lot of money.
Exactly.
And he admitted that was a worry for him. More so than the tiny quantities of Premier Cru or Grand Cru that were going to go into a private cellar that some wealthy person can afford. And that is a worry, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you saw a 200 quid basic Gevrey or Pommard on a list, would you buy it?
I tell you what then, back to the quest for alternatives.
That's true.
Right now, we'd say that if you're looking for delicious Burgundian style Chardonnay and then, Pinot too, you're looking for it because you simply can't afford 200 quid a bottle, then I would say, I think we'd say, New Zealand and Australia have never been on better form, have they?
No, that's very true.
And we could mention a very long list of names, but I think, picking out just a few, Kumu River, Dog Point.
So sort of Chardonnay type.
Yeah, Chardonnay. Well, mostly Chardonnay, I'd say here, but Kumu River, Dog Point, Vidal, Black Estate, Elephant Hill, they're all in New Zealand. And in Australia, you've got Vass Felix, you've got Tolpuddle, who also make sensational Pinot. Lewin Estate, Shaw and Smith, Tapanapa, Ocean 8. So they're all making terrific Chardonnay. Now, it's not going to be cheap, but, it's still delicious alternative Chardonnay. As for Pinot Noir, coastal California has some exceptional wines, as do Australia and New Zealand again. And of course, don't forget the up and coming cooler climate places like England, Canada, Germany.
Yep. And you could add sort of parts of South Africa to that, couldn't you? The cool South
Coast. You come across those when you were there?
Elgin, absolutely. There's some really good stuff there. Although I would also say about all of these places, none of them are exactly cheap, are they? But
they're not cheap, but
maybe they're not going through the roof as well. They're not expensive and getting more expensive.
They're quite reliable and delicious.
They're worth looking at,
Yeah. Anyway,
I think we could do another program.
I think we could do that. Why not? Yeah.
But that is definitely another program. We're not going to do it here. We're going to keep moving.
Let's not going to do it now. We're here forever.
So anyway,
oh dear.
So we wanted to finish by recommending some Burgundies, didn't we? Both from the 2021 vintage and more general drinking. And what we're going to do, I think, to save time, and so we don't end up sort of reading out a shopping list, is we'll put a full listing of recommendations on our website, and we'll put a link in the show notes to that. And we'll just feature the highlights here.
Yeah. Okay, so generally speaking, with the 2021 Burgundies that we tasted, we found the whites to be the most consistent, often fresh, mineral in style, quite serious, poised, we might say. Nothing kind of overtly sexy, but the best were gorgeous in a beautifully steely style. The reds are mixed, but generally on the fresher, lighter side of things, as we've said. The best are fragrant, they're crunchy, they're really reflective of their origins and very seductive. Frankly, what great red Burgundy should be. You certainly don't have to worry about high alcohols or overly extracted tannins. Generally speaking, the top wines, if you can find them, we would say don't really justify the extra cost because they are so eye-watering. Unless, of course, you're absolutely rolling in it. But better to go for the good village or lesser Premier Cru level, where there's some great wines to be had.
Yeah. So Matthew Hayes, writing on JancesRobinson.com, described the reds as like Proust's Madeleines, a fragrant remembrance of a bygone age, the innocent pleasure of youth. And I really quite like that. It's a nice way of putting it. I like that. And just like I really like the wines. We really like the wines. It's important to sort of say that. Anyway, so for our 2021 vintage top tips, all of which we bought, our top three were, a white was Les Héritiers du Comte Lafont Viré Classé 2021, which is about 28 quid a bottle. It's nutty and it's gorgeous white. A red, cheeky red, Jean-Pierre Vincent Charton, Bourgogne Rouge, Champ de Pèlerie, Champ de Pedrix in English, 2021. It's about 19-20 quid. It's a more funky natural style, but it's sappy and savoury, grippy perfume. It's the kind of Bourgogne you don't get in Pinots elsewhere. So we really like that. And then a sort of more splashy, outy red, Joanna Rose, Gevrey Chambertin 10 Climat 2021. And this is not because we had Caroline on the programme. We love that wine.
Yeah,
sensational.
yeah. I mean, it's splashing out for us.
£58 a bottle.
Which is
Whisper it.
splashing out for us.
Yeah, it's definitely
I
splashing
tell you
out.
what,
But
it's not splashing out compared to some of the wines.
No, that's true. So everything's relative, but
Yeah.
it's just sensational, beautifully fragrant, classic red Burgundy.
Yeah, beautiful.
The kind of thing that haunts your soul.
Now we've said them, let's hope they haven't actually sold out. They probably have, haven't they? Anyway, moving on to more general recommendations, we definitely say, picking up on David Roberts' point, we're finding pretty good value in what might have been perceived as lesser or satellite Burgundian appellations. Places like the Mâconnais, Haute-Côte, Marsanais, Santenay, Osy de Retz, Givry, Mercurey, and of course just the straight Bourgogne. But you do have to be led by the producer there.
Absolutely vital. Yeah. And in terms of all recommendations, and in terms of producers, it does seem like the most celebrated domains have almost kind of vanished, haven't they? They've been spirited off into the luxury
You just don't see them,
ether,
do you? Yeah.
Haven't they? And it's either newer names or more humble wines that are the ones you really need to look out for.
Yeah. So a couple of tips are, let's start with the white. And so we've got Le Quin-Colin Bourgogne Chardonnay 2020. It's a great shout at £19.50, and that's at Stone Vine and Son. And then for reds, we've got Domaine Vaudoisé Bourgogne Rouge 2020 again. That's £19.25 at Private Cellar. And they actually have a white Bourgogne at the same price. That's also very good, don't they? Yeah, another red is Sylvain Patin Marsanais Rouge 2018, which is around £23.50. Now, it was at the Wine Society. We're not quite sure if that's still available, but
it will be somewhere.
But hopefully. Or another Marsanais, Domaine Deré Frères Marsanais Champedrix 2018 again, £23.50 at Lee and Sanderman.
And we have checked. I mean, on Wine Searcher, a lot of these are available internationally. So, it is well worth searching for them where you are. And just to add, we have been enjoying, full disclosure, a lovely glass of Burgundy while we've been recording this episode, haven't we?
We have.
You'd be disappointed if we weren't. It is a cheeky Saint-Verin 2018 Domaine Thuillier. We'll put details of that as well as a couple of other Burgundies we've been enjoying this month on our website.
And that's where we must leave things. So by way of a super brief summary, Burgundy is getting ever more scarce and ever more expensive, as the 2021 vintage demonstrates. But also, as it shows, it is capable of a greatness and uniqueness that is still unrivaled in the wine world. Our advice is to enjoy Burgundy while you still can, whenever and however you can. But equally, don't be shy to look for alternatives.
Oh, man. So there we have it. Our thanks to David Roberts, MW, Florent Rouve, Caroline Drouin, and Jason Haynes. We'd also like to thank and flag up the excellent work of Jasper Morris, MW, on his Inside Burgundy website and podcast. It's a great resource for Burgundy lovers, isn't it?
Absolutely. And as we've said, do check out the show notes on our website for more information and all those extra wine recommendations. So until next time, cheers.